Good afternoon. This is Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to this special webinar in conjunction with Rick Nash, the CEO of YourGM Proprietary Limited, introducing your General Manager. If you have any questions during the webinar, can you please type the questions out, and in webinar terminology, raise your hand, and we will try and answer the questions later in the webinar. Let's look at some of the problems that confront business operators, both small and large, but this webinar is mainly tasked at looking at small to medium enterprises, probably businesses with turnovers under $100 million. Hiring of staff can be a very time-consuming task that does require the expertise of someone at a general manager level to ensure that the right persons have been hired within a business, the right fix, the right culture has been introduced to the organisation. Customers are very important. Has the manager or owner of the business got sufficient time to be having the communication with customers that they should have? Preparation of quotes. Depending on the industry, this can be a huge time allocation, continually preparing quotations for a business. Supervising work, making sure everything's been done according to the plans and to the customer's requirements and to meet the customer's approval. Liaising with industry representatives. In 2014, it's very important that every business is understanding what's going on in their industry and in areas close to their industry. And that does require the need for dialogue with industry representatives. Meetings. Some people like going to meetings, most business people don't, but some of them are very essential if you're going to get market intelligence and feedback and ideas, and understand what other people are doing, both your competitors and businesses that you might be able to develop affiliate type arrangements with. Time. Time's the biggest problem that most small business operators have, a complete lack of time to do things. These are the type of items that, together with lack of knowledge, that businesses should be thinking about and planning. And these are the type of areas that a business management service can help a small medium enterprise operator overcome. That's the type of service that's been offered by YourGM. One of the common questions that accountants receive is, who can assist me to get through these problems? Now, when I was a practicing accountant, I probably used to scratch my head and think about who I knew might have retired recently that might have been available, or was there a consultant that I knew? And invariably, it was very difficult to be able to answer that question honestly for a small business operator who really wanted business management support. This is beyond accounting, it's business management. The exciting thing is that your general manager, led by Rick Nash, has assembled an outstanding team of experienced business operators who can deliver these products, these services, this insight, this knowledge. They can listen. They can give someone who's running a business a sounding board for them to discuss their ideas with. Running a business is very lonely. I'm sure you people as accountants know that, especially those of you who are sole practitioners. It can be very, very lonely for a small business operator who doesn't know who to turn to. Their advisors normally are their accountant, and in some cases they might only see their accountant once or twice a year, a solicitor who they mightn't have seen for years, and who else? Sometimes they've got marketing people assisting them. So this business of general management services is a big issue for many small business operators. And GM has identified this as a area in the market that needs some assistance. So why would they want to hire a general manager? Well, I've listed some things there. Some businesses are undertaking research and development projects and require the ongoing involvement of the manager or owner to make these research and development projects come to fruition. The business might have acquired or developed a new business, and the owner or manager needs to be there to make sure the systems are implemented. Unfortunately, far too many small business operators carry a lot of the intellectual property of the business in their heads, and therefore that person is needed to set that new business up. But what happens to the current business when that is happening? Opening of a new business, virtually the same as development of a new business, opening of the business, and just generally catching up. There's always paperwork, there's always people wanting to talk to you, there's probably staff appraisals to be undertaken, there's a need to review marketing plans and business plans and read the financial accounts. And last but not least, but very importantly, having a holiday. Far too many small business operators do not have a regular annual break away from their business. Everyone needs a holiday to recharge their batteries. So they're the type of services that an external business general manager could be bringing into a business. So what are some of the basic operations that could be looked at? Well, identifying a plan for a strategic review of the business. In many cases, it requires someone from outside to come into the business, to have a good look at it. People who have got good business knowledge over a number of businesses can sit down and give the business owner or manager a strategic review of their business. Many small business operators are involved in negotiations with banks, with councils, with planning authorities, with big business, and they get a bit nervous when they're having those types of meetings. They don't know how to dress, they don't know what presentations to take with them to present. So having an external business general manager can really bring clout to those negotiations and give the owner or the manager of the business that little bit extra courage in those negotiations. Cost control is an enormous area for many businesses. An outside business manager can review the operations of the business to determine the areas where cost control should be improved. And lean management, shouldn't be loan management, it's lean management, is also very, very important. What's going on in the business so far as it relates to avoiding waste in the business in all of its activities. And customers. Do all your clients have CRM systems? Customer relationship management. Every business should have one. But who's going to set it up? If the client doesn't know how to do it, do you know how to do it? Can you spare the time? But this is a service that an external business management service can take over and make sure it happens. Implement it. It's a project. The business owner doesn't have to worry about it then. Someone else is going to make sure it happens. Staff. You could run a whole session on staff. But an external management team can help with the setting up of a proper human resources systems, which many small businesses haven't got. Making sure they abide by the requirements of Fair Work Australia, which is a major headache in itself. Implementing appropriate staff training packages to improve the everyday performance of the staff. And then ensuring that good staff are adequately rewarded. And one way of doing this is to implement appropriate salary packages so that the staff are looked after and appropriately rewarded. Business finance, negotiations, trying to get the best deal, whether it's talking to a bank, a finance company, whether it's to do with leases or hire purchase, debtors factoring, which many small businesses don't know much about, export financing, dealing with Export Finance Insurance Corporation. These tasks can be very confusing and challenging for many small business operators. In fact, I remember years ago being in Canada on an assignment with a client, and we were talking to a lady who was I thought, a very phenomenal business person. And she was going to Paris, and she said, "I've got to pick up the suit." And I said to her, "What do you mean, picking up a suit?" She was already well dressed. She said, "I can't go into a negotiation without having a man with me who's going to help me negotiate. But basically, he's going to sit beside me, nod when he has to nod, say yes every so often, but he's there to give me that backing." Many small business operators, male and female, need the same sort of assistance to help them in negotiations with business, especially big businesses. Succession planning is another great challenge for many businesses. And succession planning just doesn't relate to the owner or manager. It can involve virtually everyone in the business to ensure that someone else can do their job. Someone else has been trained in the organisation. And what flows with succession planning is an appropriate exit planning, where the owner can ultimately sell or exit the business with some dignity, hopefully with some goodwill being paid for the business. So an exit plan is something that an external general manager service can be looking at. It might include a proper systems manual. It might include documenting the intellectual property that this business owns. It might mean looking at what patents the business owns or what trademarks and what systems have been put in place. Have confidentiality agreements been signed? Have assignment of intellectual property agreements been signed? All of this is work that these people can undertake. Risk management, another huge area. Occupational health and safety. Directors and managers can get sued. Personal Property Securities Act and the Personal Property Securities Register. Rick Nash, who's going to talk to you in a moment, is an expert on this particular legislation. I happen to believe it's some of the worst legislation this country's ever introduced, without any sort of training or preparation for the business community. What system has the business put in place to make sure that one day they're not going to wake up to an enormous problem that they could have covered themselves for an outlay of $8 to have registered a particular transaction on the Personal Property Securities Register? Insurance review. Many people forget to have an annual insurance review to go through and determine what assets should be covered. And an external business person is more likely to be more conscious of the human assets. Is there sufficient life insurance cover? Is there share purchase insurance cover? Is there key man insurance cover? All very important. Competitors. Business people need to keep an eye on their competitors. But in the day-to-day hurly-burly of running a business, many small business operators don't do anything about it. Or it's only the competitor across the road they're keeping an eye on. But an experienced business manager can set up an appropriate system that's quite legal to monitor competitors, so that the business owner or manager can sit down with his board of advice every 2 or 3 months and analyse what competitors are doing. Because perhaps this business, your client's business, will get some ideas out of what competitors are doing. There's no law against copying what your competitors are doing in the marketplace, so long as they haven't got a patent on it. So why not make sure that people are monitoring what's going on? Communications. It's 2014. Businesses need websites. 20 years ago, businesses didn't worry about websites. In fact, they probably weren't around, but they are today. They're like having a telephone today. You need a website. Is it properly established? Is it up to date? Has it got interesting information? An external consultant, business advisor can help you. Social media. A few years ago, we didn't know what it meant. Thought it was invites to go to dances. Today, it's an integral part of business operations. Has the owner got the time to worry about it, or do they need some external business management? Networking and promotion, very important to understand how businesses can get involved in those activities. So what's happening in the market? What marketing activities is this business involved in? Regular newsletters, podcasts, blog articles, functions, exhibits at industry trade shows. Who organises all that? Who plans that? Who makes sure that this is an outstanding event for this particular business? Many small business operators are far too busy to be looking at that. Motor vehicle fleet management. This is another area that Rick has spent a lot of his time in as a businessman. Many businesses can substantially reduce costs by having an experienced business manager as part of their team who can evaluate the costs of their motor vehicle fleet management. So that's the overview that I wanted to give you today to emphasize there is a need for accountants to be far more conscious of the business management assistance that many of your clients undoubtedly require. And I'm now going to invite Rick Nash, Managing Director of Your Business Manager, to speak to you, and he can give you the overview of the proposal that YGM is making to accountants. So we'll just change the presenter. You there, Rick?
Yes, I am, Peter. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Peter, for that introduction. Guys, welcome to the webinar. I appreciate you've given up some of your lunchtime to attend. I'll try and keep essentially the my component fairly short and sweet. When we were putting YourGM together, we really wanted to make it a resource that was relevant and resonant to businesses of all sizes. We wanted to make it available and affordable for businesses that were starting out or in early phases of growth and development, through to businesses that were well established with up to potentially 100 employees. So we had a fairly broad remit in terms of how we put it together. So hopefully you can see my screen at the moment. These are some of the issues that most businesses have. Staff management, not using IT to automate processes, fixed costs, too high. They need more customers or clients. They need help developing alliances and joint ventures. And they have no time to develop business strategies. Marketing's often not producing results, poor referrals, cash flow problem, and so on. Staff management issues. So this is obviously our website, but a lot of these issues are endemic across all sizes of business. So since launching YourGM, we've had clients, as I say, that have effectively gone from those in that really very early startup phase through to, in fact, through to a peak body that we're looking at doing some development work for currently. So a very broad breadth of YourGM clients. In relation to how YourGM works with accounting practices, is that we've created it essentially as what we think of as a plug-and-play style proposition or a service offering. The ability to effectively just add it to the current suite of services that you provide and run it out very simply. We've built templates for accountants around introducing YourGM and links to the various videos and so on that we have. From an accounting perspective, the objective is to do three things. One is to reduce essentially accountants' workload. One of the things that we work fairly consistently with accountants, one of the things that's a fairly common theme is that you guys get a lot of non-core pertinent requests around, hey, what should we be doing about this motor vehicle? I've got a problem with HR. How do I fire this guy? I can't really find, new clients. What's the best way to do that? They're all essentially issues, as Peter's alluded to, that are non-core accounting issues, and generally when you guys get involved in them, you don't bill for that time. It's just not something that generally happens. So decrease the workload. The second issue is to increase client engagement. Having multiple service engagements with clients clearly means that as long as those services are resolved and they're producing better outcomes at a business level, those guys are not going to be going to an alternate provider for accounting, and secondly, you've created a lot of goodwill and generated a lot of goodwill. So increasing client engagement is clearly a central issue to running out YourGM. The third issue, of course, is the ability to drive potentially significant ongoing passive revenue. We built a platform that includes the ability to be remunerating the practice for promoting YourGM to your clients. I'll just give you a very quick example of how YourGM works at a very fundamental basic level. And this is not a typical example, but it kind of is indicative of how we're able to step back and as Peter said, take a bit of a helicopter view of how someone's running their business. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have an MBA in marketing. A lot of these issues really boil down to plain common sense. We have a client in Victoria who's making buckets for diggers in the mines, and cut a long story short, 15% down year on year in terms of turnover. We effectively have linked him up with a provider in a similar space, and due to the fact that he's no longer going to be distributing heavy equipment up and down the east coast of Australia by transporter, he's actually going to save in the region of $400,000 a year by literally creating an alliance with a like-for-like entity based out of Queensland. That is something that he himself would have probably actually thought of if he had had the ability to step back from his business, and as Peter said, not be running around in it every day. The ability to step back and take a different, more critical view of how his business was running. So it was evident that if he had a 15% downturn in a specific industry, that may be endemic, which in this case it is because it was to do with the downturning in the mining industry, which clearly meant somebody else had capacity. All we effectively did was join those dots and created the relationship for him. So that's really an indicative example of really what we are looking to achieve. So not only cost savings, but also, again, as Peter's alluded to, increases in profitability and revenue and so on. So for you guys, essentially plug and play, put it in, we'll rebate a proportion of the ongoing client revenue to you, decrease your workload, increase engagement, and drive effectively ongoing revenue. One of the biggest issues that we've encountered since we put GM to market for clients is the cash flow currently, and I'm sure you guys would have a lot of examples of it. The cash flow is clearly an issue for clients out there at the moment, and it's an area that we're keen on addressing as quickly as possible once we get to start working with these clients. Interestingly enough, our process is to carry out an initial review, come back with the results of that review, have some dialogue around where we see priorities being for the business, and then effectively implement a timeline to achieve those objectives. Sometimes there's a slight divergence of opinion as to what constitutes a priority, and for argument's sake, we've had one or two businesses that have high outstanding, post 90-day accounts that are potentially putting them into areas of insolvency, and they see a priority as replacing Nissan Navara with the new model Toyota Hilux. So for us, it's really a matter of sitting down with those guys and saying, hey, before we become insolvent and whatever, maybe we should prioritize getting that money in. And in fact, not only getting it in, but putting in place processes and policies and IT and software, if needed, to mitigate those issues and prevent those issues from occurring again. So there's a lot of remediation that effectively we're undertaking when we get into these businesses initially. Once all of those operational issues are addressed, OHS, staffing, HR, cash flow, the recruitment, the remuneration, all of that sort of stuff, then of course we start to work on the more interesting stuff, which is how do we grow the business. So essentially with YourGM, we have been very confident in our ability to produce really good client outcomes. So we've effectively have introduced a guarantee, which is if the client works with us for 12 months, if we haven't met their expectations, then they can in fact pay us what they believe we were worth, and we would refund the difference. Our standard monthly rate is $1,725 plus GST. We are in the process of revising the service offering at a certain level, because we've had feedback from a number of clients who would actually like to have more of a embedded, for want of a better term, GM, where we would physically have someone a day or two a week physically on site. So that is something that we're working on developing, effectively a tiered model, and obviously we will get you guys up to speed on that once we introduce it. But an interesting development that some people would really like, a physical representation, you know, as well as a virtual representation, and working primarily through Skype and email and so on. The areas that we work in, I'll just try and keep this very brief for you. These are the 20 management areas that we try and look at addressing for pretty much every client. Now, some of these may well already be very well resolved. They may have some fantastic systems and processes in place and whatever, but this is really, these are the processes that we like to go through. So we'd like to really help develop a plan to achieve their objectives. At the end of the day, it's their business. We really want to be providing just really well resolved, you know, sort of management for them. A resolved and managed CRM, customer contact management in place. One of the biggest deficits, again, out there at the moment is that very, very few of these businesses, particularly in the SME space, have any kind of customer contact management system in place. No way of capturing or monitoring how their business is derived, no way of really driving referral apart from on a very ad hoc basis and so on. So we're very keen on leveraging IT to achieve a lot of those objectives and to automate a lot of those processes that we all know should be in place. Isn't it a good idea to have at least 2 or 3 social contacts with your clients every year? Of course it is. Have a great weekend. Hey, planned your holidays yet this year? Doesn't really matter. But essentially, if you don't have the capacity or the wherewithal or the appetite or whatever to do that individually, which is very difficult when you've got a substantive database, well, get a computer to do it for you. And as Peter says, 2014, you know, get a computer to be doing these things. Compliance and risk issues identified and addressed, HR, OHS, insurance, PPSA. Just out of interest, looks like the largest single case in relation to a PPSA loss is about to go through the courts. The loss is going to be in excess of $50 million. Which will be as a result of Forge in WA going into administration. Canadian company, which is kind of ironic given that the PPSA was lifted partly from Canada. Anyhow, a Canadian company had $50 million worth of equipment on what was constituted as a PPS lease to Forge, and had omitted to actually register on the PPSR that equipment, which has now been effectively sequestered by the liquidator. So that looks like it's going to be one of the biggest ever PPSA related losses. Alliance and joint venture, acquisition opportunities identified and facilitated. JVs, alliances, again in Australia, very underutilised as a mechanism for building and developing businesses. The business cost base reviewed and savings identified and implemented. Just because we've done it this way for 20 years doesn't mean we need to keep doing it this way. Conversely, of course, it doesn't mean we need to change, but really looking at identifying potential cost savings. Application of web and IT and social media being optimised. Business grant opportunity review. This is an area that we're involved in YourGM, and I know that Peter has done some amazing work in this space. If you haven't had a chance to look at BizGrants, then I completely suggest that you do. The software that Peter's team has built is absolutely fantastic. However, if you don't have an appetite for working with your clients around grants, it is something that we can facilitate through YourGM on their behalf. And every client, we do a grant review eligibility study for. Existing client-customer referrals, we look to maximize that, again, using some smart technology. Marketing and promotional spend optimized. They start capturing the data in terms of where the business is being generated. Staff requirements identified, recruitment contracts, salary packaging. Every business effectively that has employees, almost without fail, should be running a salary packaging arrangement. It's effectively providing a pay rise for their staff at no cost to the business. Business financing requirements reviewed and optimized, pretty straightforward. Owners' individual financial planning needs addressed. It's an area that a lot of business owners neglect. We're always about the business, and really not quite so great at recognizing our own individual needs and our families. So that's an area that we're, again, very keen on ensuring that people understand where they need to be. Strategies to meet owners' business and exit plans, either by sale, transition, or retirement. Again, as Peter alluded to, new market opportunities identified and prosecuted. Networking and promotion across multiple channels, including other YourGM clients. Meeting attendance with third parties where we add value as your general manager. Peter kind of hit the nail on the head, essentially, that a lot of these guys really are not great self-advocates, essentially, that they really work better having somebody help represent them or articulate a potential value proposition that they're looking to bring to the table, and so on. So we see that as an important component of YourGM, the ability to effectively represent, essentially, our client. Coordination of ongoing third-party supplier and customer relationships. Well, pretty self-evident in terms of what we do. Motor vehicle management, again, very straightforward. Again, as Peter's alluded to, it's an area where there are very, very significant savings to be made. In fact, I would go as far as to say, I would even put a figure on it for you guys, that someone that's running 10 motor vehicles in a fairly ad hoc fashion across their business, we would clearly, by implementing market intelligence-based vehicle management principles, we would probably year on year be saving $30,000 to $40,000 comfortably, and it's very, very simple essentially to do. So also helping collateral development, print and video mediums. So all of those have one objective: provide the business with the most efficient and fastest growth possible, and to help meet the client's goals for it. So just a little bit about the team here, a group of my collegiate colleagues. We have, outside of this, an additional 10 or 12 staffing and consultants, service providers, essentially, across the areas that we offer internally. I think that is probably pretty much it, Peter. I'm not sure that I have a huge amount else to add, apart from the fact that we do have a remuneration plan for the practice, which is for every referral where a client utilises YourGM, we will remunerate the practice at the sum of $250 a month plus GST. It should be for each month as opposed to each month, although happy to have month referrals. $250 plus GST every month. So our practice, obviously, with 20 clients using GM at any one time, would be a receipt of $5,000 a month, and so on. If, as a practice, you would prefer that we reduced our fee of $17.25 by the corresponding $250, we're also more than happy to do that as well. So if you're not really looking at driving additional revenue and you really see YourGM principally as a great service offering that creates goodwill and so on, then obviously we're more than happy just to discount our fees accordingly. So look, I hope that's given you a bit of an overview of where we're at and what we do. More than happy, obviously, to have ongoing dialogue, post the webinar, and happy to chat pretty much at any time. So thanks for your time, guys. I'll let you get back to your lunch. I'll just maybe hand over to Peter just to close. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. So that's the summary of the YGM offer to accountants for small businesses to gain support to help them better manage their business. You'll be able to click on to the YourGM affiliate link at ESS BIZTOOLS website, and if you have any questions that you'd like to send through to us, please send an email to peter@essbiztools.com.au and we will get the answers back to you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.